Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, your APES 2023 Criterium road race in Rotorua is about to begin on our starters orders.
Welcome back to another race analysis. This is the Australasian Police and Emergency Services Games Criterium. This is my third race of the week, and right off the bat, Daniel goes off for a bit of a flyer. We are at the Off-Road New Zealand go-karting track. This is a fantastic circuit, very technical, not particularly fast, a few little hills and rises, and the bitumen surface is the grippiest surface I have ever ridden on. The race was 40 minutes plus 3 laps. It was a bit chilly, no wind to speak of, maybe a slight cross headwind on the top straight, but that faded towards the end of the race. As you can see from the map at the bottom, this course is twisty, lots and lots of corners, a few areas to get up to speed, but then straight into hairpin after hairpin. They started the whole field off together. There's only 18 competitors, but that includes males, females, and people from the whole age range from 30 through to 60 plus. Within the first few laps, we had it down to about 5 riders, and then a few laps after that, it was just the 3 of us. Andrew, Daniel, and myself. We've got Daniel ahead of me in the camera at the moment, and Andrew in the orange top just behind. There were a few other riders who were sticking with us for a few laps. I was a bit worried about a couple of them because they were trackies, and I thought they might have a pretty decent sprint, so I was pretty keen to keep the pace high and see if we could get rid of them pretty early in the race. So we're 3 laps into the race. I've done a lap on the front, Daniel's done a lap on the front, and Andrew's now leading. And we're coming through these 2 hairpins, and these are really challenging corners. The apex is a lot later than you expect, and as you can see here, it's a little bit difficult to sometimes pick where to tip into the corner. Andrew manages to keep it on the bitumen, but only just. This corner is important too because it comes into a rise up here, and so if you do lose a little bit of space dropping off the wheel, if people attack up into the rise, you can end up having to do a lot more work to get back on. The other feature of this course that was really tricky was this sort of chicane here. It was impossible to move up or really change your speed through the corner, and so it became pretty apparent early on that the way to win this race was going to be either directly on the wheel in this last corner or potentially off the front, because through that corner no one's catching you, and it slows down enough that there's not really much in the way of a draft either. As you can see in the rear camera, we're down to 5 riders in the lead bunch, but pretty quickly that whittles down to just the 3 of us. A little bit later on, Daniel's done a good turn on the front. I look back, and as we go through these S-bends, through the U-turns, I can see that there's a gap opened up behind us, and Andrew's not with us. He's not directly on the wheel. I decided to use that to put in a bit of a dig to see if we could split the field, and ideally if Daniel and I can get off the front and leave Andrew behind, he's probably what I was considering my biggest threat in this race. Andrew won the road race with a phenomenal long sprint, and the problem is, I think genuinely he's just stronger than me. Normally if a sprint goes long, that's a good shot for me to win it, but he just left me in his dust. Unfortunately, Andrew sprinted across the gap, and that brought the race down to the 3 of us. So with the race down to the 3 of us, I'm starting to think about how it is I'm actually going to win this race. Now, playing to my strengths, I like to go hard and then recover, and so I figure I'll just punch in as many sort of really short, sharp, hard efforts as I can, force the 2 of them to chase me on my terms, and then hopefully that'll tire them out by the time we get to the end of the race. I've now had a bit of a chat. I've met the other 2 and learned a bit more about them, and I don't think that was ever going to work. I think they're both very similar riders to me. They're both very punchy. Both have got really good sprints, and they both consider themselves sprinters, not climbers. And so this tactic was going to work for them as much as it was going to work for me. As you can see, they've closed the gap pretty easily. Andrew's had no difficulties doing it. I punch it up into this last hairpin and completely mess up the corner, which makes it easy for them to be on my wheel, but nevertheless I'm going to kick it up to 800 watts or so, just to see if I can put some hurt in. Now, I'm not interested in carrying on with this. I don't want to get off the front by myself. I know that the 2 of them combined will drag me back whenever they want to, but I just want to make these kind of little attacks as often as I can to tire them out. We're about halfway through the race. I'm on the front again, and I'm going to put in another little attack here, only about 500 watts, but that's a very short straight. and then once again coming out of the hairpin, which I take a little bit better this time, punching it up to a 700 or 800 watts. And this is a really repeatable effort for me, although it clearly is for Andrew too. He's drinking in the camera behind me, so I wasn't, I don't think, hurting him as much as I was hoping to with these little moves. Here's the same corner again, 2 laps later, and same deal, out of the corner, kick it up. This time I've got a little bit of a gap to Daniel, he has to do a bit more work. I think these little attacks probably were hurting Daniel a little bit more than they were hurting Andrew, but they weren't really putting any significant pressure on either of them. So jumping right near the end of the race now, putting in another little attack, one attack into the second hairpin and then another big one out of it. And at this point I'm starting to think about how I'm going to win this race. There's really no need to be doing turns on the front at this point. We've lapped everyone at least once. It is just the 3 of us. This is 1, 2, 3. It's just the order that counts. And at this point I think I decided that was just about going to be the last attack that I do. Hopefully I've done something to tire out their legs. You can see that one got my heart rate up to nearly 180 beats a minute, so that one was a bit more of a genuine attack. But now I'm just going to try to get off the front and spend as much of the time as I can in the draft from here on. We've got 4 laps to go here, and I'm just not quite sure about my back tyre, and I glanced down to make sure that it's not gone flat and ended up going a bit cross-country. Fortunately, the other 2 didn't try to take advantage of that, and I slotted in at the back. Alright, so we're within 3 laps to go. My heart rate's down to 156, and I decided to try a bit of a flyer, just in case they're going to let me go to try to force the others to chase. I figure if I attack and they hesitate, who knows, I'm fresh. I've, heart rate at 160, I'm having a great time. Unfortunately, Andrew's just straight onto my wheel, absolutely no separation whatsoever. I mean, it's not really a long enough or steep enough hill to do anything with. Anyway, what you can see from this corner is it is really, really hard to pass through those chicanes. And at this point I'm coming in and there's a slight crosswind from the right to the left, cross headwind, and so I gutter it to the left to try to force them to do a little bit of work. But now we're coming to 2 laps to go. I don't want to do any more work if I can help it, so I'm going to shut it down and just see if I can get back on the wheel and roll through for the last lap or so.
This is your last lap.
So we are on the last lap of this race. I have accidentally managed to come through to the front again. Andrew in the orange has been doing most of the leading out for the last lap or so. As you can see, my heart rate's back down around 160. Daniel, though, has been sitting on the back the whole of the last 3 or 4 laps, and I want him to come through. So I let Andrew's wheel go. This is deliberate. I'm looking back at Daniel, waiting for him to come through, and he doesn't. And at that point I realise I've left quite a big gap, and Daniel's played a blinder. He has not come through. He's forced me to close the gap that I've opened, and that's fine. It's not a big gap anymore. You can see I'm just about on his wheel. But what I was saying earlier is it is really hard to make up space once you get into these chicanes and the S-bend. And as you can see, Andrew has just lit it up here. I'm doing my usual attack power through these corners, and I'm not really closing it. And I just don't get onto his wheel. He's got 2 bike lengths. That's it. And the problem is, coming into this S-bend, it is impossible to make up space. I needed to be on his wheel all the way through these S-bends, not 3 bike lengths off. And so I thought, that's alright, I'll just sprint up to his wheel from here. But he plays a blinder. He just lights it up and goes, and I don't have enough ground to catch him. I reckon if I'd had another 100 metres I would have got him easily, but the road ends where the road ends, and he got it. Daniel, I managed to squeeze out, so he wasn't able to come past me, but Andrew just saw the gap he had and went for it, and was a deserving winner of the race. Fantastic race. I really enjoyed the whole weekend of racing, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.